the parable invites us in to help us break out of our own conventional wisdom and to stretch ourselves so that we can become a more full and whole human being. So we're what the parable's working on. You don't go to it seeking a solution to something or trying to find the right answer. It's there to help us, which is what all spiritual practices are there for.
When life throws a challenge at you, one thing is certain: to find a resolution for every issue, every problem, for everybody, there's more than one way. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the More Than One Way podcast. Thank you for joining us. This episode begins a new series of discussions centered around the parables. Each episode will discuss a specific parable and what we may learn about ourselves by spending time with the story. One of the wonderful things about parables is they meet us exactly where we currently are. So we invite you to listen with fresh ears to these timeless stories. Set down any need for answers and embrace the questions you may find. Let's jump into the discussion.
Well, one of the ways that I was thinking about, getting into this is, so I was thinking about it this morning as I was walking, and I've been doing some type of Bible study, either participating in it or leading it for 36 years now.
Wow.
So, and usually, if not daily, like when I was in seminary or in the church in Dallas where we did a lot of Bible studies, it was definitely weekly for 36 years. And so I've been, reading things about the Bible and doing stuff. And as I've done that, what I've come to realize, or what I've come to, how I get at the Bible now is by letting each person kind of go at it the way that person's going to go at it. And what I mean is, we all enter into the Bible, and usually we have some kind of belief, and usually we're trying on some level to have those beliefs confirmed a bit. And we like it when the Bible does that. And so what people tended to do was say, well, this is what the Bible, this is what that passage means. So this is what, and they would do that with each passage.
Right.
And what I come to realize is, rather than trying to correct them or something like that, or say, well, no, that's not what it means at all, and tell them, really, I've come to realize that it's best just to use the Bible as kind of like a devotional tool and say, okay, rather than say, this is what the passage means, you could say, this is what the passage means to me. Or this is what the passage says to me.
So personalizing it.
Yeah, personalize it more rather than trying to objectify and say that this is the overarching meaning.
It opens up the possibility of more than one meaning.
Yeah,
potentially.
Yeah. I think the Bible has many ways that people go about using it, and you get meaning based on how how you're going about it. And a scholar is going to get a particular kind of meaning. Somebody who's using it more, like I'm saying, as a devotional tool, it could get just as much meaning in a different way, but it applies to that person and maybe not to somebody else. Maybe it does. So I really am in a place where I'm just much more open to letting the Bible speak to people just how it speaks, and as long as we're keeping it on that subjective level.
So what does that look like in a group or a study if kind of each person has their own interpretation or kind of what it means to them? How does that work in a group?
Yeah, so in my experience, how it works is some people will connect with where that person is, and some people might be in a different place. And then if we can keep it on, this is what it means to me, then each person will be able to kind of share what each passage means to that particular person. And like I said, and sometimes they're on the same page, sometimes they're close to the same page, and sometimes they're not. And usually most people can be all right with that the Bible, and in particular parables, has more than one meaning.
Yeah.
Okay. And so parables, the primary way that Jesus taught, especially in Matthew and Luke, are really open-ended teaching tools. And so they're just ripe for more than one way to see that. They're just ripe with the way that I talked about going about studying Scripture.
Versus everyone focusing on finding the meaning or the interpretation.
Right. And getting the right answer, or this is what it is. Once again, as long as we can keep it with, this is where it's kind of taken me. Then we're totally getting out of scholarship or any of that kind of thing that's saying there's just one meaning.
Right.
And we can find it. And like I said, in parables, more than anything, are just, that's what they're all about. For me, parables are this teaching tool that really isn't looking for the right answer. It's really looking to invite people into the parable so that they can find out something about themselves. So parables are there to help people discover something about themselves, not to get the right answer.
Or to kind of decree something.
Yeah, or to decree, yeah.
So it's more invitational.
Yeah.
As far as kind of welcoming the person in.
Right.
Even though maybe we don't necessarily do that so easily sometimes.
Sometimes people have a hard time with that kind of open-ended way of going about it. If somebody who really wants definitive answers and concrete certainty, well, parables wouldn't be the way to do that.
Right.
Jesus would have said, well, this is this and this is that. But instead he tells these stories and invites people into the story. And generally speaking, the stories confuse, annoy, frustrate.
So it's not like your comforting bedtime story before you go to sleep.
I mean, there are some parables that can have a comforting side, but a lot of it will just depend on how you go at it.
Yeah.
Because even ones that might seem comforting to one person, to another person, it could seem like, what?
Yeah, very disruptive.
Yeah, like the prodigal son, So for somebody who can identify with the prodigal son, it's comforting. But to somebody who can't, it's just terrible.
How could you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Right.
And that's what they're for. They really are for us kind of getting a sense of our own conventional wisdom, our own kind of way to go about seeing life, and challenging that a bit, stretching it, inviting us to stretch the way we see life and the way we see ourselves a bit.
Rather than like a riddle or a mystery to be solved.
Right.
More something to interact with.
Right.
Okay.
And you can, at least from my perspective and the way that I'm talking about, that I really, really enjoy going about studying the Bible now. Parables are just perfect for it because, like I said, they're so open-ended. And we can have different ways of being engaged in different, based on where you are in your life. And even the same person can come back perhaps a year later to the same
same story.
Right.
Yeah.
And find something totally different.
Because we've talked about parables before on the podcast. This isn't a new topic.
That's not.
But it is something that I think it bears revisiting, because of our own growth and where we are, and we miss things, it's nice to relook at a story another time or from a different perspective. Or
right. If parables were been there, done that, and we got the answer, now it's time to move on, then they wouldn't cause the difficulty that they've caused for most people in the scriptures. People not getting it, or even after the scriptures, people just really, really struggling with what does this mean? Kind of thing, because it doesn't just mean one thing. And so it's way past the, oh yeah, we got that. We did that.
Check that one off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's way past that. So,
did you have a specific parable in mind that you wanted to talk about today?
I mean, there is one that I wanted to talk about, but my hope is that we can talk about a few, not today, but to let this be kind of a series. And the hope is for you and me, and then anybody listening would be invited into the parable. And rather than once again saying what you agree or disagree with, what you like or don't like, what's going on in you when you hear this parable? What's happening to you? What is it? What are you doing with it? And what is it doing to you? Okay.
Yeah.
That's my hope with this for all of us. And so the parable is, I'm not going to name it. I'm just going to tell it in a kind of more modern way. Let's put it that way. Okay. So Jesus was hanging out with some people, and like he often did, he started talking about the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven. That's a big concept that he used quite a bit. And so on this day, he said, the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner, a guy who owns a big vineyard. Say he lives in Napa, right? And he's got this beautiful vineyard. But the way that he goes about working the vineyard is that he hires day laborers every day. So each day he goes into town. There's a place where the day laborers gather. He hires them. He pays them what they agree upon, and then the next day does the same thing. So on this day, he goes in early in the morning. Let's just say, right before sunrise, 6:00, and he picks up some people, and they talk, and they agree upon a particular wage, a daily wage. Everybody's satisfied with that. He takes them, and they start working. About 3 hours later, about 9:00, he goes back into town. Maybe he felt like he needed more people working. Who knows? So he goes back into town, and he hires more people, and he says, go work in the vineyard, and I'll pay you what's right. And they go. And then he goes back at noon, and then he goes back at 3, same thing. Pay you what's right. Then 1 hour before they usually quitting time, he goes back into town, and he sees a bunch of people standing around, and he says, what are you doing hanging out? What are you doing? You're just lazing about in the square here. What's going on? And the people say, well, nobody would hire us. We've been here all day and nobody's hired us. And he said, well, okay, you go and I'll pay you once again what's fair. So they go, and then they work the hour that they work, and it's quitting time. And then the owner says to his manager, okay, line everybody up from the people last to the people who came first and pay them their daily wage. So the people who worked an hour get a daily, really what would usually be a whole day's pay.
For just the hour.
For just the hour. And on it goes all the way down the line. So, but while this is going on, the people who work the whole day start to say, if they're going to get a whole day's pay, how could we not get more?
Right.
And so they're excited and they're happy and they're doing that. We're going to get more than we thought dance. And they walk up to the manager, and he gives them the agreed upon wage.
Okay. Not more.
Yeah. And they start griping. I would use another word if this wasn't a family-friendly podcast. But they start griping. And they're griping. How in the world? And finally they gripe enough to where they get to where the owner is, and they say, how in the world can you pay us the same amount that you paid those people who only worked an hour? We did all the work. We worked as harder than anybody. We deserve way more than that. And the owner says to one of them, he picks one out and he says, friend, this is what we agreed upon. We said this is what we were going to, I was going to pay you from the very beginning. I've done you no wrong. And he goes, I've just chose to give the people who worked only an hour the same that I gave you. It was my choice. Or are you mad at my generosity? Or is it, I don't get to do with what's mine what I want to do with it? Is that it? And then the passage in Scripture ends with this kind of cryptic line, and the first will be last, and the last shall be first.
So it wraps it up all nice and neat.
Right.
And everybody's like, oh, okay.
Okay, got it.
Got it.
Yeah, right. Okay, and that's the parable, right?
Yeah.
And I've done this parable with many groups, and it generally doesn't sit well with most hardworking folks.
Yeah.
Can you see why? What does it make you think of?
I think I can definitely personally relate to the feelings that the people that got there first had. I definitely have been in situations where I've felt that way before, or maybe felt wronged.
Yeah.
Even though that wasn't the agreement was honored.
Uh-huh.
But it just didn't feel right. Didn't feel fair.
Yeah.
And
what's that like when it doesn't feel fair?
Man, it's intense. I mean, you really, it feels personal.
Yeah.
Right. When you're at that point, and I guess it's to a point where you're looking at someone else or something else and kind of measuring it or comparing it.
Okay.
With the idea of this doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like that's the way it should work.
Okay, so the unfairness starts to generate comparison.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what happens in life when life is comparison?
Ooh. Yeah, not good.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
so
I have a story about that. I was thinking about that. And, when I preach on Sundays, I generally come down to the church and work Saturdays because it's quiet here and I can do the things I need to do in order to kind of finalize what I want to say on Sunday. And when I hadn't been here that long, when I would come, I didn't realize that the football games were so flippin' big and crowded. All right, so I would drive down before anybody, or just the diehard tailgaters were out.
Right.
But it wasn't like really packed. And as I was driving, I'd kind of see the tailgaters and think, man, they're going off to just have fun, and I'm going to work. And see, the thing is nobody knows I'm doing that. Like, there's not like people here going, good for you for working on Saturday. Way to go, man.
Yeah.
So it's just me. And I found myself with those diehard tailgaters being like, oh my God, I can't believe this. I'm going to work, and these guys are going to do this. And nobody even cares, or nobody even notices.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found was when I do that, it was hard for me to get into what it was I was doing.
Oh, I bet.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I just at its worst, I would start to resent them or resent Tennessee Vols football.
Yeah.
So when parables like this pop up, that pops up into my head, and I realize, well, heck, I don't really even want to go to the football game anyway. I mean, really, I like to go down and have quiet and to engage things like this, like what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. I like to do that. It's my idea of a good time in many ways. Mm-hmm. So why on earth am I begrudging them for going off and having a good time? Right? Yeah. But that's the thing.
Yeah.
For me anyway, when I start to compare.
Yeah. Right?
Does that make sense to you?
It does. I think of that quote that comes up a lot about comparison being the thief of joy. And I think it definitely, it puts us in that self-focused spot so many times that we just can't even see the good things around us anymore because we're so focused on what we think we deserve.
What we're not getting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, for me anyway, is that group of people who are grumbling, which includes me sometimes, it doesn't make them bad. What would be bad is if I denied it, but I was doing it. but I pretended like I wasn't doing it because I'm not supposed to grumble according to this parable. So what the parable's inviting me to do is not judge myself, but to become more self-aware, to realize, oh, okay, you're doing this now. So I'm begrudging these people. Why? What good is that?
Yeah.
What's it going to get you?
They're not even aware.
They don't
just
care.
Going to the game.
They're just going to the game,
having a good time.
They're just going to the game, and that's the trap that I think that one of the traps that for me this parable is trying to help us see. Because if we see it, then we have maybe a little maneuverability, maybe some choice.
Well, and I think sometimes I know for myself, I've looked at a parable and tried to look for the right and the wrong, or who was doing the good thing and who's chosen the wrong path, you know? But it seems like you're saying that's not what the parable is asking me to do.
Well,
it's asking me to do something different.
I mean, you can do that.
Yeah.
And I think in the story, that's what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So then you'd have to say, well, what does that do for them?
Yeah.
What happens? What do they find out? Well, they find out that this is all about the owner, in a sense.
Okay.
That the owner is all right with this.
Mm-hmm.
And why does it bother them that the owner is being generous?
Yeah.
Not to judge them, but to say, why does that bother you? Does it really bother you when somebody else gets something and you don't get it? Or you think they shouldn't get it?
Yeah.
They haven't worked hard enough for it?
So the value of their work or the value of the person, you might be judging that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so you start to judge that. And once again,
I mean, they're judging the landowner in a way with the idea.
Totally. What are you doing?
You shouldn't do that. If I was in your position, I wouldn't do that.
That's right.
Maybe is what they're thinking.
That's right. You're going to make them, I don't know, they're going to lose initiative. You know, they're not going to
work hard.
They're not going to work hard if you just
You're
keep
hurting
doing
yourself. This isn't a smart business model.
Rather than, okay, that group, what if I put myself in their shoes?
Yeah.
In that last group's shoes. And instead of, because they don't really know why it is that they only worked an hour. They only know that they worked an hour.
Right.
Right. So here's another learning within the parable. So the parable brings me up and says, well, how often do you just judge people and what they're doing without really knowing what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Right? How often do I do that? And I have to go, wow, I do that. I do make snap judgments about people without really knowing what they're carrying or what's happening.
Yeah.
So in this instance, what's happened was they just couldn't get hired.
Yeah, for whatever reason.
It wasn't for lack of effort.
Yeah.
And so for me, I would think if I put myself in their place, I would be like, how scary would this be? Because in this kind of an economy, a day labor economy, you get paid for the day, and then that means you get to eat.
Right. So you've been there all day, worried.
And you could be worrying.
What are you going to do? Yeah.
Yeah. You could be scared. You could be afraid. Mm-hmm. You could be, oh my God, I'm not going to get paid today. Or even when you're working for the hour, I'm not going to get enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I put myself in those shoes, then maybe I can have a little more compassion for when they get the generosity.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than just assume I know. Right? And it's hard to do that when it's on a large scale. So I can see it happening when we just kind of keep people in groups rather than seeing them as people. Meaning keep people in kind of what's the word? As different from me and not like me, rather than no, they're a human being. They're just in a different place. Right? And this parable invites me, once again, it doesn't invite me in to judge myself for when I do that. It's to say, watch yourself when you're doing this.
Yeah.
What happens? Because what happens is I get real tight. and I get real beyond judgmental toward other people. Like I said, I get almost mean.
Yeah.
Like these guys could be getting mean.
And I think it's interesting. Obviously, these are kind of timeless feelings. I mean, this parable was told how long ago? But those feelings we can feel them pretty fresh, and reading it, they kind of bubble up in us. I mean, so there must be some lasting message that we're supposed to explore.
Right. And it can be different at different times, as we kind of talked about at the beginning with parable. The message can be different at different times. Like, so for once I did this with a group, and a woman was saying, when we started talking about the comparison thing, and she started saying, well, when do I not do that? When am I not looking at somebody else or paying? And she said, when I'm doing a job that I'm so into, that I so either enjoy or I just am in it so much, then I don't care. I'm not paying attention to what anybody else is doing. That's what I learned with the coming down to work on Sunday. I like to do this anyway.
Yeah.
Right? And it was the same with her. She was saying, when I'm so engaged with what I'm doing, I don't really care about what other people are doing. And so if they got the extra money, great. If they got the generosity, great. Because I liked it.
Yeah.
Right? So that to me, I thought that was great in terms of this is a timeless thing, because it says to me, how am I entering it into life? Because this is life. It's not just working in a vineyard. The vineyard becomes then a symbol for all of life. And it's when I realize, no, I'm really engaged with what I'm doing in my life, so I'm not that worried about what other people are doing.
Yeah.
And when is that not helpful?
Yeah.
Right? When is it not a helpful thing?
Well, and I think thinking back about how the parable started with the idea of the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven is like.
Yeah.
You wonder if someone's initial reaction in hearing it would be like, well, I'm not sure I want that.
Yeah.
If that's what it's like, I don't feel good about that.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, it's like, okay, so when you hear that phrase, the kingdom of heaven is like, what does it make you think? No wrong answers.
Yeah. And as you're listening, what does it make you think?
Yeah,
too?
yeah, please.
What is it that's that brings to mind? I think if I just jumped in to answer quickly, I might say that for me, it almost sounds like maybe somebody telling me about a place that they've been that I haven't been. Like maybe they're sharing a destination that they've been to and telling me, hey, this is what it's like there.
Right.
So I think my initial reaction, just from my own kind of where I might be coming from, is to think of the place.
Okay, so this is what the place is like, but I don't know what it's going to be like.
Right.
And then the person fills it in with this story.
Right.
What's it like? What's this place going to be like? Do you want to still go?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, and then it wraps up with that last line.
Well, no. I'm seriously asking you. I'm asking you to answer that for yourself.
Do I want to go after hearing the description of what it's like?
Is this still an inviting place?
I think I could say yes and no.
Yeah. Okay.
There are things I could say, well, gosh, it seems like it's open. It seems like it's that there's space for a lot of different people and situations there. That obviously I would say, okay, that feels different than my day to day at times.
Right.
So yeah, I could see that.
Well, what's the no?
Well, the no is that I still have to wrestle with how I feel about that at times. With the idea of being real honest, maybe it's my own lack of control.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
With the idea that I don't determine what happens there. Where
Right.
I feel like I pretend or I want to believe that I determine what happens in my day-to-day life at times.
Gotcha. So in this place that's represented by the concept, the phrase kingdom of heaven, somebody else is in control or something else is in control. And you get to participate.
Yeah.
Is that like exciting, or is that like,
I think it's exciting in some ways, and then it's unknown in other ways.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think it's like we've mentioned, I mean, this isn't the only parable that starts the kingdom of heaven is like.
Yeah, most of them do.
So there are lots of different ways to describe that.
That's right.
Lots of different colors to it.
Yep.
You know, it's not just one way. So
right.
I think as we discuss those and study those, it starts to become somewhat clearer, maybe.
A broader picture,
Yeah.
different. Well, I mean, so it makes me think of people who oftentimes, when they hear the phrase kingdom, and especially the word heaven, okay, so it makes them think of a place like you oftentimes, but usually it's a place after death.
Yeah.
And then they have an image of what that place is.
Right.
Right. So how many different images have there been of heaven?
Oh, my
Streets
goodness.
of gold and
puppies.
I don't know where angels and harps came from, but there's one. And what else? I heard somebody today, a friend of ours say today, is like lollipops and sunbeams and butterflies,
rainbows,
and flowers,
cartoon birds.
Yeah. So, you know, it's so a lovely place.
Yeah.
In that regard. So the thing is, though, if you have that image already, so you're saying that this is like a place I don't have an image for, and I don't know what it's going to be like.
Gotcha.
And I'm saying the people I've talked to oftentimes say, I have an image.
I have one. Yeah.
I know exactly what this place is supposed to be.
Right.
And then they get this story. How do you think they feel?
Tricked.
That's right.
Duped.
That's right. Duped.
Wait a minute.
Tricked. One person said, it just makes my head hurt.
Yeah.
Right. And that's right. Yeah, fair enough. It's doing its job. Right. All right. So now you can take a look at, in this instance, your picture of what heaven is like, and then see if there's any room whatsoever for a parable like this to help reshape the image.
Yeah. And I think you had said, as we were discussing, that parables help us get out of our problem-solving mind.
Yeah.
And I think that's real helpful, just because I think that's a natural, I know for me, a natural reaction to kind of think about solutions and options and all those different kinds of things instead of sitting with it, listening to it, you know, and spending time in it.
Yeah, and then,
asking questions
paying
of yourself.
attention. Yeah, what it's doing to you.
Yeah.
You know, because the problem-solving mind is great when it's needed.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fantastic mind. This is when it's not needed, I think. Once again, I think parables are like, if anybody's familiar with the Buddhist world, are like Zen koans.
What is that?
So a Zen koan, like the one that I always remember because it's the most famous one, is, what's the sound of one hand clapping? Okay, well, there's no rational, literal, quick answer to that question.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want one, you're just going to be really, really frustrated.
Mm.
And the people who tell that story, usually, once again, they're inviting the person they're telling that to just sit with that and see where it takes you. So to me, parables are like that. So this parable is like that. Where is this taking me? Right? So if it takes me into what I think heaven is like I said,
okay,
how does this help me see heaven in a broader way? If it might take me to what God is like.
Okay.
Because, one way to see the owner of the vineyard would be a symbol for God.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So does the way he act fit with the way that I understand God to be?
Okay.
And if not, what do I do with that?
Right.
Once again, so it's not, the parable invites us in to help us break out of our own conventional wisdom and to stretch ourselves so that we can become a more full and whole human being.
Mm-hmm.
So we're what the parable's working on. You don't go to it seeking a solution to something.
Interesting.
Or trying to find the right answer. It's there to help us.
Okay.
Which is what all spiritual practices are there for. So the Bible as devotional tool, a parable as a devotional tool to help me to go back to the driving to work on Saturday when everybody else is going to the football game, to help me deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
So that I'm not just living my life in pure resentment, thinking somehow or another that's justified.
So it has some practical application.
It can.
Yeah.
It can. And like I said, I'm just saying, for me, that's what it did for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing. Right? And so the other thing, if we're going to take the God picture into it, it's going to say, is my God that generous?
Mm-hmm.
Or does my God have more blocks and rules and who's in and who's out?
Right.
And I get to ask myself that question. How generous can I let my God be?
Wow.
Right?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, so that question pops up, and I need to just be honest, so I don't want to just condemn myself if I say, well, I'm still not quite able to be let it be her, him, they, to be quite that generous. But I'm working on it.
Yeah.
One of the big things about parables is, I think we mentioned this at the beginning, but I want to reiterate it, is that its meaning can change as we change. So its meaning can change as our lives move forward, as life goes on. And it can change from year to year, week to week, probably not week to week as much as year to year, but it could, based on what's going on in your life. So for me, I really, really, really resonate with the people who come last.
Okay.
Okay, those are the ones that I'm most, and really always have. Right?
What is it about them that you connect with?
I don't like work.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, work, it doesn't like jazz me.
Yeah.
It's
some people it does.
Yeah, some people it does. And they
doesn't.
get a lot of meaning out of it, and a lot of, I like to do what I like to do, which is, can be very good on the one hand, but also at times kind of immature and troubling. And I think as time has gone on, I still identify with them. But what I saw was, the younger I was, the more I judged the other group, the hardworking group.
Okay.
And what I found was, oftentimes that's tends to be what I've done, and what I see other people do is, we're, like you said before, we're looking for the good guy, bad guy. So instead of the last people being the bad guy, they now become the good guy.
Okay.
And the hardworking people now become the bad guy. And that, so I could just judge the hell out of them. Right? So it's like, those Boy Scout, whatever you want to say, rule following. Workaholics, yeah. But as time has gone on, what I've recognized is, no, there is no good guy, bad guy in this. I still want there to be at times, but there isn't. And it's once again, it's more of a, for me, how I've changed with it is, it's more of an invitation for me to see where I am in all this. Maybe I'm in the first group, maybe I'm in the last group, maybe I'm in one in the middle.
Yeah.
Not much is said about those guys, but
I was thinking about the manager too.
Maybe
that I wonder if the manager, when the manager's told to go pay everybody the same, you wonder if that manager's like, I'm going to catch X. When this goes down, with the idea of they're going to be mad at me.
Right.
They're going to come after me. And, it's just interesting. There are a lot of different ways to or step into it.
Think about that, because so now they're going to blame me. This is my responsibility. I have a responsibility to keep this thing going. I've got to pay obedience to my boss, and on and on and on. And when do I do that? And when do I side with the workers?
Yeah.
Or however you want to say. Yeah. But for me personally, it's trying to see myself still as somebody and have empathy for the people who come last without blaming the people who come first. And that's been a big, big shift and continues to be a shift for me all the time because by turning the hardworking people into bad guys, then I miss how good they are. Yeah. Is what I've found. Right. And so that, I don't know if I'm really, really getting across to you how much that's changed since I was in my 20s. Because that's when I started really studying Scripture. Mm-hmm. I went to seminary when I was 24.
Okay.
So really started studying it then.
Spent some real dedicated time.
Yeah, and so it's changed and it's changed and it's changed. And the biggest change has come in that arena.
When you were in seminary, was that the first that you kind of encountered this way to look at parables?
No. No. Seminary is purely academic, at least when I was there. Okay. And so they were really trying to look at the scholarly side of the Bible, which has its place, who wrote this and when did they write it and what was the context of when they were writing this and all that. But what I found oftentimes is we do all that, but then you still have the passage. And what's the passage trying to do? Mm-hmm. And that's really taken a lot of time and work for me to get to have that being the focus. Mm-hmm. And then it just reiterating and then seeing how in my life that has shifted and changed. Especially in parables, once again. Yeah. And then I've just come to truly not just believe, but experience. These things don't have one answer. Yeah. And I will kill myself if I try to find an answer. Mm-hmm.
And the answer you find for now may not be the answer for later.
Yeah, that's what I mean by it'll change as you change.
Right.
I mean, I didn't even think about the manager, but that's something that I could do. Thank you for listening to this episode of the More Than One Way podcast, brought to you by the Center for Spiritual Practice in Knoxville, Tennessee. We really appreciate your time and would love to hear your feedback. You can reach us by emailing hello@morethanonewaypod.com, or you can connect with us on social media using the handle @morethanonewaypod. If you found this episode helpful, we hope that you'll share it with your friends, with your family, with people you work with all the people who you know. Thank you and take care.